The People's Park in the heart of Denver is closing for a while. Too much human waste, garbage, and discarded needles for the city to keep up. Douglas County's leaders officially ditched their public health experts and installed themselves in charge of things like COVID-19 guidelines. Crisis counselors say they are increasingly getting calls from people who are simply overwhelmed by the sad state of the world these days. So let's talk about something beautiful and hopeful, like what a pharmacist did to help a young Coloradan at high risk from COVID. That's next. Civic Center Park in the heart of Denver is closing indefinitely so that the city can clean up human waste and discarded needles there. Fencing's already going up around that National Historic Landmark that's frequently filled day to day with people openly selling and using drugs. Drug use, even acts of violence in and around Civic Center Park, are not new. The city says the damage to the park is bad enough at this point that it needs to be closed and cleaned up and the trash hauled away. Parks Department also pointed to graffiti and a fire started at the Pavilion Amphitheater just today as the decision was announced. This year, up to the end of August, there were 452 reported crimes in and around the park and more than 7,000 calls for police service there. The park closures being done under the same public health and safety authority as Denver's homeless sweeps, which have mainly served to just push people living on the streets from one area to another. And the city is not trying to claim that this park closure and cleanup is going to do anything to address the underlying issues or to prevent future problems when it reopens. It's just being described as a temporary emergency measure. Douglas County's Republican commissioners are expected to create a new government agency to escape the medical advice of their public health department, which is mandating masks in schools. It's a decision likely to come down at a meeting any moment tonight. And the decision could come with added legal costs if Dougco gets sued by a neighboring county that used to be their partner in Tri-County Health. Here's Steve Staker.
Of allegiance.
All of this has happened so quickly.
Indeed it has. Here's a quick recap. When Tri-County Health proposed a stay-at-home order last year, the Republican county commissioners in Douglas County first threatened to leave. They wrote a letter in July of 2020 giving Tri-County 1 year notice that they were leaving. But they rescinded that in November after Tri-County agreed to let counties opt out of their health orders. When Tri-County passed a mask mandate for kids in school this year, Dougco and Adams County opted out. Tri-County's board then voted to take that opt-out power away, which led to today.
A resolution withdrawing from the Tri-County Health Department.
It is very unfortunate that the actions are of our response to a pandemic have triggered this reaction and triggered Douglas County leaving.
Jennifer Ludwig is the deputy director of Tri-County Health.
To have it happen at the height of our response to COVID-19 was incredibly difficult and has added, taken away a lot of our attention that could have been spent on focused on the pandemic.
This afternoon, we got a copy of this letter sent from Arapahoe County's attorney to Dougco. It asks commissioners to slow this process down, worried that if they just leave, it might hurt the other two counties. And it threatens legal action if a Dougco Tri-County divorce hurts Arapahoe County. Ludwig says it very well could.
Them leaving sooner doesn't change the process that we're going through, but it could have early budget implications because if we don't have the Douglas County funding next year, somehow we have to make up that difference.
A Dougco spokeswoman told me today it's too early to tell the financial impacts on the other counties. And so the commissioners move on. And if Dougco makes this decision today, they're going to vote in just a few minutes here. They'll have 90 days to appoint a health board. They already have that on the agenda for next week. And once that health board meets, state law says that the agency then exists and Dougco would be officially out of Tri-County, though they would still likely contract with Tri-County, Kyle, for all of the services you actually need a health department for. Things like restaurant inspections, environmental health. They say they've paid Tri-County through the end of the year. They say they're relying on the goodwill of Tri-County to help them through this transition until they establish their own health department. But they would still rely on Tri-County to do all those things. This would just be a governing body.
The Republican commissioners have put a lot of pressure on the school district to drop the mask mandate. It's not immediately clear if they create their own health department that they'd still be able to barge in and tell the school district you may not require masks here.
You could still have the school district listening to the CDC and taking the CDC's advice, the American Academy of Pediatrics. They could do that. they could follow that guidelines and those advisories. It'll be interesting to see if the political pressure shifts now and if the Douglas County School Board kind of becomes ground zero for this argument about masks inside schools.
Well, that certainly was the commissioner's goal, and they take a step forward tonight. Thank you, Steve. There are more than 900 Coloradans currently in the hospital with COVID-19, or what's thought to be COVID, and almost 1 in 5 hospitals statewide expects a staffing shortage within the next week. We asked the chief medical officer at UC Health when we should know if we're going to see any kind of post-holiday surge after unvaccinated people traveled and went to gatherings.
Hopefully not, but if we start to see an increase in cases, to probably be at about a week to 10 days. And then we'll start to see it then from a hospitalization perspective. We usually start looking at it about 2 weeks after any of these holiday events.
Dr. Gene Kuttner recommends that anybody who thinks that they might have been exposed to COVID over the holiday weekend, or anybody who's in a crowded indoor setting, to go and get tested 3 to 4 days later. Crisis center counselors are skilled at dealing with people who are handling some desperate personal emergencies. Yet they told our Mark Salinger they're increasingly seeing calls about all of the traumatic events that are piling up on all our minds, like wildfires and the violent end of the war in Afghanistan.
America's longest war is now over. Fires have decimated millions of acres of land in California.
States of emergency and emergency declarations for 2 types of natural disasters.
The World Health Organization is tracking a new COVID variant.
Let's be honest, there's a lot going on in the world these days.
Yeah, I just did it there. Sometimes you need a breath. Sometimes you need like 5 breaths.
A deep breath and a walk in the park.
Being outside definitely helps.
Between fires and hurricanes and terrorist attacks and the pandemic and everything else, there's a lot that requires our attention. 9 News psychologist Dr. Max Wattel agrees. It's exhausting.
It makes those situations that much worse because we are already feeling anxious and depressed.
There are feelings a lot of people are experiencing right now. Just ask Richard Camp.
Is that these collective issues that we are facing, they do find their ways or their way into the calls much more often.
Richard is a senior counselor at Colorado Crisis Services. This year, people are calling more and more stressed about things like mass shootings, natural disasters, and the virus. Things we're all dealing with. It's his job to answer the phone.
And I can just provide that safe, open space for someone to unload everything that they're going through, their traumas and their dramas and so on.
We are serving more people now than we were prior to the pandemic.
Dr. Carl Clark with the Mental Health Center of Denver says all the fighting about masks and vaccines and so many other topics has a lasting impact.
It's no longer about who's right and who's wrong. It's about me against you.
So take a breath, go outside, and remember, you're not alone. The challenge in all of this is feeling like we're coping with it all while not becoming completely desensitized to it. It is common to say, listen, I just don't have the mental capacity to deal with this right now. And Kyle, experts say that's okay.
And Richard Camp, the counselor you're talking about, was saying that this is a bit of an unusual experience for him and other counselors because they are in the experiences that people are calling concerned about. It's not just tell me what's going on in your life. They say, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. It is. They understand what everybody's dealing with when it comes to fires and hurricanes and everything like that because they're experiencing the exact same way. So what they say is most important is just listening, saying, hey, I'm here to hear whatever you have to say, and one step at a time they can get people out of those crises.
Yeah, I think the collective exhaustion hits people differently and comes at different times. And it's good to remember the help is out there.
And do you
Mark,
feel it?
Thank you. When their vaccine experience didn't go as planned, a pharmacist turned their helplessness into hope.
It took everything I had to not just break down in tears in the middle of the store. It was just unreal.
You might dread the end of summer. This family already has winter on the mind because their stakes are high. And on a holiday meant for celebrating, this community is serving.
It's an important day because today is Rosh Hashanah, which in the Jewish tradition is the Jewish New Year.
That's next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is one family's annual summer tradition. The Haney family gets together every year to place bets on the timing of the first snowfall at their homes in the metro area. This year's guesses range from September 29th to November 5th. Winter used to get ice cream. Now it's just bragging rights. Here are the Haney family rules. The snow has to accumulate on the grass, and you got to take a picture for proof. We asked our meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen which first snow date he would bet on this year.
Yeah, that's a really fun game, and of course I want to play. You know, I'm usually rooting for the snow to come as early as possible. So last year on September 8th, that first snow was amazing. That's obviously not going to happen again tomorrow. So maybe I should lean a little bit towards the climatological average, which if you use Denver's official weather station at Denver International Airport, that date is October 21st. So really like Kaylin's guess there at October 21. But I'm going to go just a little bit earlier, and here's why. The last 4 years, we've gotten that first snow before that climate average, and the jet stream has been exhibiting characteristics, signs of becoming a little bit more active over the next 3 to 6 weeks. So I really think we're going to get one or maybe two opportunities to see some snow around here before October 15th. So Kyle, put me down for October 14th, 1 week before that climatological average. So I'm really hoping to get some ice cream out of this deal, Kyle.
How's your day? Yuck, right? It is a Tuesday that feels like a Monday, and then there's this smoke and haze covering the metro area. Yeah, it was cooler today in the mid-80s, but that air is bad, and there's more smoke and haze coming in tonight and tomorrow. Air quality alerts posted, and most of the smoke is from wildfires burning outside of Colorado. Air quality alerts from Denver up to Fort Collins, back to Steamboat, down to Aspen and Crested Butte. High pressures are a dominant feature, no chance for rain. As a matter of fact, one more day in the 80s, and then we're headed into record territory. Smoke, haze, and 57 degrees tonight. Tomorrow's high just below 90, and then we might break a record Thursday. The record's 94. Friday's record is 93. A little cooler for the weekend with a chance for a few late-day storms on Saturday.
A story now about vaccination and kindness. When Max Day turned 12, his family in Lafayette was relieved because it meant that Max qualified to get the vaccine. He's immunocompromised, so he's at high risk. Max also has epilepsy, and he's on the autism spectrum. And getting the shot turned into more of a challenge than his family expected. Max's mom says when they first took him to get his shot at the Walmart pharmacy in Broomfield, Max just was not having it, despite the pharmacist, guy named Justin, despite his kind and gentle attempts. So a few days later, Max's dad brought him back for another try at the vaccine, and the pharmacist, Justin, put together this whole celebration for Max. Balloons, and cupcakes, and toys, everything to make the experience better and more welcoming. It worked. Max was able to get his first shot. The days told us how much this meant to them.
And in that moment, Justin represented hope for me in a hopeless moment. And that was much bigger than just a COVID shot. It was hope for our society and our humanity that we can show up for each other like that.
Yeah, I think it's a reminder that something so mundane and kind of awful can come from such a interesting place and space, and that you can turn anything, anywhere into a celebration.
Justin, the pharmacist, is already preparing for Max's second shot. He called the family to ask if Max likes temporary tattoos. And the Day family told us that Justin mentioned to them that he's trying to work with Walmart to see if they might be able to hold some vaccine clinics at fire stations, thinking that might entice kids like Max. Rosh Hashanah is a celebration of life's sweet moments.
Knowing that somebody cares. A lot of times it's that little acknowledgement makes them feel 100% better during the day.
A living example of that between new neighbors. And it's a sign that delivers on a warning. Next. It really is just me in here. It's very sad and lonely. We wish a sweet and happy new year to everyone celebrating Rosh Hashanah. Temple Micah, they are living their faith. by helping some new neighbors. Temple Micah shares a worship space with Park Hill United Methodist Church in Denver. That church is sharing its parking lot for a city-sanctioned homeless camping site.
Blowing an instrument we call the shofar. It's a ram's horn. That's something that is blown on Rosh Hashanah to call people to pay attention, to be present. It's our custom in our community always to make this time of year that pushes us inward to also balance it with action, because all the inwardness in the world doesn't matter unless we do something with it in the world.
Okay. Today is Rosh Hashanah, which in the Jewish tradition is the Jewish New Year. I am out here providing lunches for the safe outdoor space that Temple Micah shares with this community.
It's the SOS camp, safe outdoor space. I'm Alan Bowe. I'm living in this camp right now. Oh, yeah, it's just like having a home to come home to, you know.
So this is the safe outdoor space, and right next door is Temple Micah and Park Hill United Methodist Church.
With a temporary safe outdoor space, we wanted to highlight and continue to educate about people experiencing homelessness.
Being able to do something like this not only brightens somebody else's day, but it also brightens my day to know that I'm helping others.
We all feel like, oh, I got to save the world, and it's all or nothing. If I can't do something to save the world, I can't do anything. And the truth is, it's these very all tiny, small things that we do that are ultimately going to make the world the way we want it to be.
Knowing that somebody cares. A lot of times just that little acknowledgement makes them feel 100% better during the day, you know.
Love the spirit of that idea. You know, you think you can't change the world, so you're not going to do anything. Do the small things, just like Justin the pharmacist in our earlier story. Temple Micah is also planning to donate lunches to the folks at that camping site on Yom Kippur later this month. The sign is a good warning, but I would say the bear does a better job of getting the point across. That and your feedback about the New York Yankees next. It's a sign that states the obvious. There are bears in the area of the I-25 South Gap project. So says the sign on the dumpster, and so says the bear inside the dumpster with the sign about bears. Our viewer Laura saw this the other day. I'm picturing somebody sneaking up there to throw food in the trash dumpster, and boom, up comes the furry head from over the top. Send us the signs that make you look twice. Email next@9news.com or use the hashtag HeyNext on Twitter. Kevin Cheney writes in tonight using the HeyNext hashtag on Twitter about the closure of Denver Civic Center Park. Says maybe we can finally get safe injection sites so this stops happening, talking about open-air drug use in the park. Important to remember that Denver was on board with that idea. It was Democrats in the state legislature that did not have the votes to make it happen. Michael in Centennial writes in to say that I cannot play for the New York Yankees because of my facial hair. The Yankees only allow mustaches. This is where the boss would like me to say I'm not going to have a mustache here tomorrow.